Okay, so the U.S. military shot down a Customs and Border Patrol drone. Yes. And the only reason we even know about this is because three Democrats came forward in Congress that when they had been informed about this. And the important sort of, I think, part of this is that Congress tried to initiate interagency communications and training for individuals who would be flying these counter drones, as they call them, for the Customs and Border Patrol. This was something that Congress tried to make happen because they could foresee this coming. And of course, the White House said that's not necessary. So now our military has shot down one of our own drones. And just think about it. Think about the protocol, that the steps that must be carried out before you shoot anything down. And obviously, this should never happen, right? The United States military and U.S. border agents, last time I checked, they operate under the same flag and they're funded by our same dollars, right? Sworn to the same Constitution. And here we are, we have a situation where one arm of the federal government shoots down the equipment of another. Not some adversary, not, a cartel drone, not a foreign spy platform, but a U.S. government aircraft. And that's not just some simple mistake. Like, that's a total system failure. And, you have to think about what had to go wrong here. A military operator identified an unknown aircraft. And that means either the aircraft wasn't visible on the systems that it should have been visible on, or the operator was not informed that it would be there. So, this is not a pilot problem. This is a communication process problem somewhere between command headquarters, regional air defense, federal law enforcement coordination. The information and communication chain collapsed. And maybe it didn't collapse because apparently it doesn't really exist. But when this collapses, people revert to the only thing they're trained to do: neutralize the unknown, right? Now, let's just imagine the implications. If the military can misidentify a federal law enforcement drone, then whatever system that distinguishes friendly from hostile is weaker than the public has been led to believe. Air defense operates on recognition, radar signature, flight plan filing, transponder codes, authorization routing, interagency notification, which never occurred. The entire point of all these systems is to prevent something like this from happening, especially within our own airspace. Friendly fire in a war zone is tragic. When it happens inside your own country, that's pretty alarming. This isn't just about the loss of some aircraft. This is a breakdown in civilian military coordination. One of the most sensitive balances in, any country, because the military has enormous power. Domestic law enforcement has its domestic authority. So this wall between them, that's not just legal, it's largely procedural. They operate separately on purpose, but they must still communicate. And so we have this refusal from the White House to participate in joint training and communication matters. This is this reminds me a lot of what we're seeing with the lack of training with ICE officers and the tragedies that has likely directly related to that. You have to ask yourself if Good and Preddy are still alive had those officers had the proper training. As well as other people. Border surveillance flights are a thing that happen daily, and military training flights as well. Counter narcotics operations happen, disaster response flights happen. You have the Air National Guard operations, that all those things share airspace. And training is where agencies learn each other's protocols, their radio frequencies, procedures, escalation steps, deconfliction zones. You don't build those relationships during a crisis. You build them beforehand in training. When agencies stop training together, they stop trusting their assumptions about each other. And I must remind you, the lack of communication and training between agencies is also something that led to 9/11. Let's not forget that. A military operator faced with whatever uncertainty they were faced with, they have seconds to decide, not hours. They don't have time to walk into a committee meeting. This is something that happens quickly. And these people rely on systems and coordination. When you remove that preparation, and suddenly what happens? Every unidentified object becomes potentially a threat. So this is not the fault of the people there on the ground. This is directly pointed at leadership. This is directly pointed at the White House. Next time it might not be a drone. It could be a rescue helicopter during a wildfire. It could be a disaster response aircraft after a tornado. It could be a National Guard reconnaissance flight. It could be a medical evacuation aircraft operating under some emergency operation authorization. It could be anything. Air defense decisions are pretty binary: identify or engage. And if the system that provides identification is basically trash because of poor coordination, poor leadership, then the risk is much greater than just equipment loss. Now you've introduced a much higher probability of casualties caused by an administrative failure or disconnect. The public tends to think that national security failures come from external threats. And the truth is, they often come from internal incompetence, which is one of the things that I've always been most concerned about with this administration. internal incompetence from an administration that does not care about qualifications or training or competence in the people they choose to lead their agencies. I mean, there's a Fox News host running the Department of War. So, I mean, what do you expect? But, history shows us that large institutions, like the United States, they rarely fail from one, dramatic decision. They fail from thousands of small ones that go uncorrected. Missed meetings, declined briefings, ignoring protocol. All these things seem minor when you just look at each one individually. And, and then some incident forces everyone to notice that the system is much weaker than anyone knew. So the real problem here isn't that, we shot down one of our own drones. The real problem is why. The real problem is what this whole thing reveals. And it reveals that parts of the federal security apparatus were not sharing operational awareness. It reveals that people in the field were placed in a position where uncertainty exceeded the information that they had. And it also reveals that policy decisions at the very top, at the White House, have once again translated into a lot of risk at the bottom. Risk which is carried and taken on by personnel, by people who volunteered, who have to make irreversible decisions. And this is exactly the kind of scenario that modern command structures are designed to prevent. We have the most sophisticated airspace monitoring system in the world. We have all the best stuff. And this happens. Trust between agencies is part of operational infrastructure. These people even know each other? I mean, does all this seem normal? Or missions continue, flights continue, patrols continue? Eventually, the assumptions collide with reality. And that's what happened here. It's not enough just for a government to have a bunch of powerful tools. And national security isn't just defending your borders. It doesn't matter what we have if we don't have any leadership, if we don't have any competent leadership. And the people that are most at risk here are the people that they claim to love, those war fighters, as they call them. We are doing those soldiers in uniform a major disservice in this country by putting people in charge of our institutions that are utterly incompetent. I don't know how else to say it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I really appreciate you guys so much. Please like, follow, and share. You guys have a great week.